Blog Talk Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Suntara here. I don't think I have anybody listening, but I am going to start the show because the last show didn't go on air an hour ago. Chrism has contacted me in the meantime, and now he is going to ring into the studio as soon as he can. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is I am going to hold the space until he comes. So, 1 second now. So let me see. I wanted to put up on the group that the show is live, but I don't have a link or anything like that. So I'm going to just wait until Chrism comes. And when he comes, I can then let people know that he is on air. And they can speak with him. I have to stay on the studio until he comes. Okay, guys. So here we go. What am I going to speak about? I suppose what I can do to begin with is let you know where you can go if you'd like to make a donation to the work that Chrism does. You can go to two places on the internet. The first one is the Safeties website. If you go there to KundaliniSafeties.com, at the end of the page, you will see About Chrism. And down there in tiny little writing is if you want to make a donation, and you click on that. So do that if you would like to make a donation on that site. You can also go to www.chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com, and there you will find a donate button. Here is Chrism. Hi, Chrism.
Hello.
Okay,
hey,
so you're on air.
Am I on the air?
You're on the air, but I don't think anyone is listening. So if you just talk, I'm going to go back onto the Kundalini Awakening group and put it up there that you're on air. Is that okay?
All right, good enough.
Okay.
Well, as everyone may know, at least everyone that follows, this program and the many different aspects of the Kundalini that we discuss. Well, right now, Santa Rosa is on fire. It's burning. This is the city that I live in, and a great firestorm came in on Sunday and has been devastating the city ever since. So I've had to go outside of Santa Rosa to a smaller town to the west called Sebastopol, and I'm sitting at this diner, and I'm talking you from Dee's Diner. And it's a very big shift for this community. And within a Kundalini context, fire is the great purifier. And that's not just the physical fire that I'm talking about. I'm also talking about the Kundalini fire. Just like it swept through the hills and the valleys, and followed a distinct course blown by the wind, so does the Kundalini within our body, blown by the divine wind, sweep through the valleys and the mountains and the terrain of our body and our soul. And in many cases, it burns away a lot of the aspects of the individual that don't serve the individual any longer, and certainly not within a Kundalini context. So it burns away. It's the great purifier. With the human, though, one has to really, really adjust to that. They have to adjust to the fact that they need to be cleaner in their thoughts. They need to be more gracious in their attitudes, more forgiving in their attitudes, and they need to be in a very strong way purified of the ego, the egocentrisms or the egocentricities that we have living in this society. Kundalini is that wildfire within us. And it's a slow burn and a fast burn at the same time, just like this one is over here in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, California, United States, North America, soul system. And when this happens to an individual, literally things are being, in a way, destroyed right in front of you. And sometimes if you have the Kundalini fragmentation, that is all part of this wildfire of grace that is sweeping up your spine and exposing the weaknesses and the issues that are blocking an individual, and really laying open and bare the egotistic perspective that the individual may have had before the Kundalini came. And in the background, you're hearing one of the emergency radio programs going on. So I don't know if you can hear that, but if you do hear the voice speaking behind me, that is one of the emergency radio stations that they have playing here. And I just want to reiterate with you and with everybody here that these wildfires that happen within us are just as devastating at times as the wildfires outside of us. When you're inside of that fragmentation, well, you lose your perspective. Just like people that have been burned out of their house and, burned out of the life that they once knew, so can the Kundalini burn you out of the inner house that you are, the mind that you have, the thoughts that you have, the feelings that you have, the spiritual perspective that you have, the psychology that you have. All come under a long-term and sometimes sudden change. And it's this long-term and sometimes sudden change that can really, really, really become a devastating destruction upon the outer and inner world of an individual. And so it's very important for people to understand that the Kundalini is that holy fire. It is that holy, wild fire that consumes everything in its path. Everything. And it's a much longer burning wildfire, because this wildfire will burn for the rest of your life while you still have that body. And it will eventually burn away the resistances that you have to these changes that are being, forced upon you. You'll be forced to understand the new perspective, the new ideology, the new mannerisms, the new ways of thinking and feeling, the new spiritual perspective that will come upon you. And this perspective is known as enlightenment. And this enlightenment goes beyond the egocentric idea or understandings of what enlightenment is. So I know that I'm most likely not talking to anybody in the audience here, unless Amelia tells me that, oh yeah, somebody tuned in. But this is for the people that want to come into the archives and the people that want to check in on this later on. Thousands and thousands of people have been displaced by these wildfires here. And conversely, thousands and thousands of people have been displaced by Kundalini wildfire coming up within them. As I said before, it can be just as shattering an experience, just as shattering as an outside your, in your environment, your physical environment, when a forest fire or a flood or an earthquake or a hurricane or a wildfire comes through. It can be completely destructive to everything in its path. And I'm going to suggest that you really, really button down and do your best to follow the impulses that are coming to you, to follow the intuition that is coming to you, to follow the rules of grace as they are given to you. As I said before, the Kundalini is a much longer burning fire. It's not less in the intensity of the change that is occurring within a person, but it's much longer lasting. These wildfires here will pretty much be out by the time I leave for Minnesota in 8 days. These will be pretty much gone. But the Kundalini fire is not so fragile. It will burn strong, and it will burn consistently, and it will keep redirecting you. Even as you resist, it will keep redirecting you towards its refinements and its enlightenment for you and within you. And it's relentless, ladies and gentlemen. It is relentless. The wildfire out here in Santa Rosa right now, it ebbs and flows, and, depending on the wind is where it goes and of this nature. Well, with the Kundalini and with the divine wind, it will get blown into the crevices and the secret areas of your psychology and your emotional body, and just begin to uncover all of that. I'm looking for a word here. All of that, shall we say, material, and burn it, and force you into a different level of understanding, force you into a different level of comprehending the world around you. It's very important for you to understand this. It's very important for your sanity and your safety for you to understand this. The divine guidance is never mistaken. And when that sacred feminine comes to those secret areas and destroys them, you just let it happen, and you follow the rules of that divine grace that comes to you. She may come to you with pictures about how she wants you to be, like maybe in a more worshipful stance. So she may send you the picture of a person in a church, or a person that's helping the homeless, or somebody who's committing selfless service upon the populations in whatever way, like we have here. Like I have plenty of opportunity right now to go out there and help people that need help. This is what I do. And I suggest you do it too. If something like this happens inside of the vicinity where you are. I hope you're understanding. Kundalini is that inner wildfire, and it burns extremely hot, and it burns for an extremely long time. But mostly, I have to say, as you accept the refinement, as you accept these changes, as you learn to walk in the new landscape, things do get much easier. It's not always, going to be, this terrible experience. Not at all. Not at all. It can be a very beautiful, wonderful, amazing experience. But right off the bat, it can be very, very powerful, very strong. And as I sit here at Dee's Diner and partake of the wonderful food that the owner has just cooked up for me, I stand here in complete appreciation and gratitude for, my placement with that's Denara. Denara, sit. He's a nice man. Very nice guy. German Shepherd. Yeah, she's very protective. Oh, beautiful. She's what's her name? She's young. Inara. She's Inara. Good girl. Yeah. She's a good kid. She's a good girl. Tika over here, you can pet though. Tika's much more social. Very good German Shepherd. My God. Good girl, honey. Good girl. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say, I'm on the radio. I just want to say that as you're inside of your great inner wildfire. Open to the changes, open to the grace, open to the inner intuitive instruction that the Kundalini is going to give to you. And it will give to you. Even if the instruction is just to change the way you feel, change the way you see things, change your level of understanding of what it is that you can do or you can't do. It's very important for you to accept these changes, even if your ego isn't exactly appreciative of it. Even if your ego is screaming, oh, I can't do that. I can't make these changes. You can, and you must, and you will make those changes. Being forced to do things in a different way is exactly what it sounds like, being forced. The people here that have had their homes burned down, they are not left with any kind of a resistance option. And you need to understand that within the Kundalini wildfire, neither are you left with any kind of a resistance option. If you've looked at the videos that I posted on the Kundalini Awakening exclamation group on Facebook, on the Facebook network, you can see that where houses once stood, there's literally nothing but a pile of ash. And that is what will happen to the inside of an individual having the Kundalini wildfire sweep through them. Anything that is of a resistance nature anything that is of a resistance nature is going to be turned to ash. Whether that is turned quickly or slowly depends on the agenda that your Kundalini has for you. For some people, because they've done other work in other lifetimes, that change can be very slow and very steady and very gentle. And for other people that perhaps haven't had a lot of opportunity to do this work in other lifetimes, it can be a bombastic change, a huge change, a change that challenges the idea of their very existence. And still, you must surrender to that change. You must learn how to cope. You must learn how to surrender to the will of the divine and the grace within you as experienced through the Kundalini wildfire. And my gosh, it's a never-ending wildfire. It's beautiful in its agenda, beautiful in its operation, beautiful in the expenditure of love and happiness and grace and joy and bliss and ecstasy and all these things, but very, very dominating, very, very shocking in many ways, and very detrimental to the idea of how life should be lived from the ego perspective. The ego perspective is one of these areas that is going to have to change. It's going to have to change, ladies and gentlemen. And just as these people are being forced to leave their home, which is now a pile of ashes, and what they had on their back, just the clothing and what they were wearing, because this wildfire swept through so quickly, people couldn't take anything. They were lucky to get their pets out alive. And so they have to learn how to adapt to these changes, just like you will have to learn how to adapt to the Kundalini changes happening within you. Are you getting all this, Santara? Is this happening? Guess not. Well, I guess if I'm just talking to the air, then the air will have learned what I have to say. And with my intention and the Kundalini intention, I will go ahead and sign off this program and hope that in some way this has been able to be recorded and relayed to those for whom it will help the most. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hear that Chrism has suddenly dropped the call, and I was actually over speaking with somebody, Michael Del Sol, that's on our group, and Chrism has disappeared. So I have no idea if he said that was the end of the show. I'm going to assume it was accidental and that he's going to call back in. And so in the meantime, I am going to actually say hello to Michael Del Sol. Michael, here I come. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Santara.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
You are live on air. So
I'm
you may have had a question for Chris. Because,
I wanted to call in to
chat?
see how he was doing. I wanted to just ask how he was doing, if his house remained unscathed, and how he made it through the firestorm.
Yeah. I would like to hear that as well. I believe that he has escaped it, but let's see when he comes back on, and hopefully he will. How are you doing? Have you got anything that you could share with us in relation to your process while we're waiting? Putting you on the spot there, Michael.
Talk a little bit about that. Yes, no, I'm comfortable speaking about that.
Good.
My process began in December of 2011, so just about 6 years ago now, my process began. And it started with a pounding headache. It felt like there was a little pin hammer banging on the inside of my forehead. Blood pressure was super high. I was hospitalized several times for blood pressure. And I was telling the doctors in the hospital at that time that I had a beehive, a buzzing type of beehive on each foot. It felt like there were thousands of bees surrounding my feet, and they were just buzzing and vibrating at very high levels. And over the course of the next 2 years, 2.5 years past December of 2011, that buzzing feeling made its way through the top of my head eventually, and it came up, and it was quite traumatic sometimes. I didn't work for almost 2 years, and I moved back in with my parents and went through a divorce, and it was very tumultuous. And as Chrism was talking about earlier on this show, he was mentioning how the fire can rage and it can totally transform a person, and it certainly did for me.
Wow. A total destruction, it sounds like, of how your life was, Michael.
Yes, absolutely. I had to learn after the first stages of Kundalini activation, when I was able to reassimilate back into society, I had to learn, what do I like? What type of movies do I like? What type of foods do I like? What type of foods does the Kundalini want me to eat? And then she told me, quite forcefully. So I went through many different stages with that. And currently I'm a vegetarian. Mm-hmm. I do eat eggs and some cheese, but I avoid the red meats and all the processed foods for the most part.
Okay,
How about
okay.
you? Are you
and then
on that type of eating?
Oh, I've gone through different things with my diet as well, and very Kundalini-led, Michael. But I'll come back to that. I'm not avoiding it, but I'd like to just ask you, in those 2 years when everything was changing, did you know about Kundalini? I mean, you're saying you went and you spoke about the buzzing hive in your feet. Can you talk a bit about, how Kundalini made itself known to you?
Well,
yeah.
Well, it's an interesting story, and I'd love to share it. And it involves Chrism, so it's going to be an interesting time to share it here on his show. And what happened was, throughout the first year and a half, I had no idea what was going on. However, I did have the intuitive idea that I should not go to the medical doctor MDs. I knew that just intuitively. And my mom would try to talk to me about what was happening and the symptoms. And I didn't say very much to her at the time. I didn't talk much during the first year and a half. But I just kept telling her, I think this is going to be okay. I'm working this through. And I ran quite a bit. My story involves a lot of physical activity. So typically around 6 or 7 in the evening during the first part of the activation, I wasn't working. I sent an inappropriate and threatening email to the university president where I worked at that time. So I wasn't encumbered with a job, so I had plenty of time for other things. And I was living at home.
Okay.
And my car was repossessed and all those different things. So I didn't have a car payment. Any of those things that I used to have to deal with, that would have taken my time. But so in the nighttime, I would run, and I would literally stay out along the side of the road running or in the woods running for sometimes up to 12 or 13 hours. And some nights I would run anywhere from 12 to 18 miles. And I did that every night. And then I'd come back around dawn and I'd sleep a little bit and eat something. And my mom would prepare it. And then I'd just wait. And I did that again. And that was my routine for at least 8 or 9 months in the beginning. And that helped move the energy. I remember running at that time and thinking that the running and the pounding and the climbing and the jumping, everything I was doing, it was helping move the energy in my body. And Chrism referred to it as pounding the Kundalini into each and every individual cell. So during the first year and a half, I had no idea what Kundalini was. So about a year and a half into it, I started getting more comfortable being around people a little bit more. I didn't socialize. I didn't date, nothing for the first year and a half. And I was able to get on a computer, and I started Googling some of my symptoms about a year and a half in. And I started Googling the symptoms, the buzzing in the feet, the other things I was experiencing at that time. And the very first website that popped up was Kundalini Awakening Systems 1.
Wow.
If you can believe it. So there was a number on there, and I said, I'm going to call this guy up. So I did. I called Chrism up, and he spoke to me that very first day. But it was just amazing. And then we started Skyping, and he started working with me and helping me. I mean, quite a bit. He helped me a lot. And then we met down in Florida. He came down to Florida for an event that he was attending here, and I was able to meet with him, and we spent a day at the beach, and he taught me quite a bit at that time because I had no context whatsoever to even understand what was happening. There was no understanding on my part. But I believe the Kundalini led me to Chrism, and I believe that no one comes to Chrism by accident.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you completely there. And the first website that you came to when you needed that information was his. I mean, that's definitely Kundalini
it's a foggy
led.
recollection, Santara. I mean, it was the first day of searching. Let's say that it might not have been the very first site, but it was within the first couple of hours. I know it's because it's foggy. I don't really remember that time.
I know,
well, but I do remember calling him, and I remember talking to him, and I was so relieved that someone understood what it felt like to have this buzzing in the feet and working its way up through the legs at that time and into the hips. And I had tremendous knots throughout my body. Wherever the energy would move throughout my back as it went upward, I would have golf ball-sized knots. I mean, just tremendous knots. And I remember rolling on different items on the floor trying to work those knots out. So it was just a relief to me to speak with Chrism and have someone understand the symptoms that I was experiencing and someone who wasn't saying that was crazy. So that was quite a relief.
Oh my gosh, it must have been, that it was in inverted commas normal, because it was within that new information. That must have been incredible, Michael, to have somebody come relief. And do. Yeah. It must have been. How did it change? You're running and you're moving the energy. You were doing all that yourself though anyway, weren't you, initially, before you spoke with Chrism?
Yes. But yes, it was a year and a half into it at least before I spoke with Chrism. But for at least the first, let's call it 18 or 19 months of this, I had no idea what was happening, but I did know intuitively that I needed to move, and I knew intuitively that somehow this is going to be okay. I never, ever thought this was going to be the end of me. I just kept thinking, this is going to be okay. I just have to move this energy upward, and I'm going to be good after that. And I had that reassurance from the Kundalini. So she was constantly with me, and I was constantly guided by her. It's hard to describe now, but at the time, I didn't even question it because there was no need to question it. It was by necessity I had to move, and I had to move the energy. There was no going back. There was only forward. The only way out was through.
Oh, that's just fabulous. That's just wonderful to hear that, Michael. And so after the year and a half then, and after speaking with Chrism, tell us a little bit about your process then and how it went. I mean, say even the diet and that sort of thing. What changes came about after speaking with Chrism?
Well, after speaking with Chrism, I had a context for understanding what was happening, and that made a huge difference because I was able to get to where I was up to that point, but I really needed that. When I first talked with Chrism, and he told me about the Kundalini, and he explained it to me, and he gave me resources, the website resources, the safeties, he explained the Tibetans, and all the different things he gave me. That was tremendous. And through Chrism, I learned about Gopi Krishna, and I learned about Paramahansa Yogananda later, and different people who've experienced this, of course, Jesus Christ. So Chrism just provided me with a face-to-face human teacher, because the Kundalini was a teacher as well, obviously. But he was a face-to-face human teacher. And when I first started interacting with Chrism, we'd Skype, and it was such a relief to Skype with him, because I knew at that point that I wasn't alone, and all I had to really do was try to listen to him the best way I could and follow the directions, which I was not good at the time. I'm much better now. But I knew that there was going to be another side to this, and I could get to that other side, because he was an example of that. So it gave me a lot more hope when I was able to interact with him. So without Chrism, I don't know if I'd be sitting here today. I really don't. I think he was that helpful and that instrumental. I may, but it would not have been as smooth. And remember Chrism, with his story, when he was homeless and everything, he didn't have a face-to-face human teacher, so it took him a little longer to figure out what was happening, and he didn't have access to the internet. So it seems like his process would have been faster, perhaps, if he had those things, but he might not be who he is if he had those things. So I think of it like we all go through the process that we need to go through, and hearing his story, sometimes I think I had it rough, but I wasn't homeless, and I wasn't covered, with a suit of armor the way he was. And he talks about peeling off the suit of armor that had grown upon his skin from being outside for that long and not showering. Yeah. But yes, absolutely, it was a tremendous experience, and I'm still going through changes. I'm still experiencing more Kundalini activation changes and stages. And Chrism says the Kundalini is not done with me yet, and everything he said has been true to this point, so I believe him.
Yeah, you could trust him. I certainly do as well. And I'm the same in that my Kundalini, the spontaneous thing that it started, it came on its own. I mean, I had an activation going for quite a few years and had no clue that that's what it was. I had never heard the word Kundalini. And like you, I knew not to talk about it with MDs, I knew not to say anything, because I knew I wasn't nuts, even though if I was to describe or speak about what was going on in my life, I mean, even from the perspective, as you were saying about symptoms, it sounded really crazy. And but I must say I had some concerns over some of my symptoms. I mean, I used to go into fear about them. I would have had, let's say, an MRI, because it looked as if I was having what was it? Multiple sclerosis. I used to get numbness in my head, paralysis, all these kind of things. And all the stuff about the insects under the skin and all that sort of thing, that are all so normal, Michael, if you have the information. But when you don't, it's like, oh my God, it's just, and then, I had kids, and I was, and a partner and a husband. So I was living in that context. And I often think if I didn't, I don't know what I would have done, because my love for them really, and my wanting them to have a normal mother kept me
I have
sane,
well, but I just didn't see my children during those first year and a half. I did not see them often. But I was so fortunate, too, that I had a mother who was open to this, and I just kept telling my mom that I believe this is going to be okay, and she did not Baker-act me. She did not involuntarily commit me. My mom, when I look back at her behavior and how much she really just helped and how wonderful she was at that time, I'm forever indebted to her, because I think most people would have called the white coats and sent me away to the involuntary type of a Baker Act situation where I would have been committed.
Well, Michael, that's a real blessing, because I think so. It's not easy for a parent, is it, to watch a child, and to really trust that all this weird and amazing stuff that they're describing is okay, and that they'll get through it. I mean, that was wonderful and unusual,
and if
I
anyone
would think.
Looked at Chrism's YouTube channel. Chrism interviewed my mother back in 2013 on his YouTube channel. It's called Kundalini Parents. If you just look on the YouTube channel and look for Kundalini Parents, you'll find Michael Belsal's mom there, and she elaborates in great detail upon what was happening at that time and how interesting it is to her. And she looks back now very fondly at that time. She thinks it's exciting, and she's very happy about it now because I'm doing so much better. I have a job, and I'm doing well, and I'm getting along well with my children, and my life has very much become much better than it ever was before the activation. So she looks back now and thinks that it's a gift from God, and she's very, very happy to have been a part of it. So
Wow.
I just give her a lot of credit, because without her, I don't know where I would be, to be honest with you. So.
Oh, that's a really good story. So, Kundalini parents, if anybody is listening, when people are listening to this, go to Chrism's YouTube channel, and I remember that video actually, and it's a really good perspective. So, listen to that, and it's one of the ones that there's a couple of Chrism's videos that are very good to show your loved ones. And that is actually one of them that you can show to somebody who cares for you. It doesn't have to be your mother. It could be your brother, your sister, even a partner. It just gives that perspective, and it's really, really helpful. So, that was a really good thing she did there as well. Well done.
Absolutely.
Kudos to your mom, Michael.
Yes. And by the way,
right.
I'll share one more thing about her if we have time. Do we have time to share one more thing about her?
Yeah, we do. You have.
Yes.
I'm watching the Chrism hasn't come back yet, but keep going. I'm hoping he will.
well, while we were meeting with Chrism did give my mom Shaktipat, and she had a lot of health problems prior to that. She had a fused spine and lots of disintegrating disc and things of that nature, spinal issues. And now, 6 years later, after meeting Chrism, she is doing much, much better. She's not on nearly the level of medication she's on. I mean, she seems like she has the energy of a 45-year-old now instead of a 72-year-old. So I think she benefited very much from my activation and from being in the presence of Chrism, just that one day that she was with him. And I believe that it's positively impacted her life, just having the experience of being around me during my activation and having contact with him. So it's amazing for me to watch, and it's just incredible.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful thing to share with people. Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. And she's so right, because it is a gift from God, I mean, and that's what you've just spoken of as well, Shaktipat, and your radiance, and the fact that she was so supportive created a grace, giving we receive and all of that as well. I think, Michael, her support of you. Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah.
I'm beginning to see now that when one of us activates, it impacts many, many people. I believe it's impacted my children in a positive way, and other members of my family. So I believe that we are going to just keep spreading this love to other people and this way of being, and it's incredible. It's the greatest thing in my mind that can actually save humanity.
I agree. I find the same thing with my family, the impact just my Kundalini awakening has had on my children and on my relationship with my husband, and just on my life and relationships in general. Apart from the time when I, the time when you, I don't know if you experienced this, but the time when you really don't want to have anything to do with anybody and you lose all your friends. Because
yes,
I found that the Kundalini rearranges all of that too, from the place where I remember I was so involved in drama groups and so many other social things, and the interest was just taken away, and I would be out with people and I just couldn't communicate with them anymore, and a lot of friendships just fell away. But other ones came in their place, eventually.
Yes, the Kundalini changes nouns, people, places, and things. That's the way I think of it sometimes.
That's true.
It just transforms the entire life of a human being, and it's so much for the better. It can be tough. I mean, I had a lot of entities, and I had a lot of issues. I remember real time looking over my shoulder at the dishwasher when all this first began, and seeing a 7-foot dark entity behind me there, real time, eyes open, and it can really be frightening to someone because I didn't believe in angels or demonic entities or any of those things. I would have told you it's all hogwash, and that these are the superstitious tales of weak-minded people. That was what I would have told you before the Kundalini. So the Kundalini took a chance to show me how wrong I was and how boastful and how egotistical I was at that time. I mean, it was a correction that was very forceful, and it can be quite scary. It really can. And so it was what I needed at the time, and I don't have those issues today, obviously, but at the time I did have those issues, and Chrism remembers that time well, and I remember calling him sometimes. I'm a 220-pound, 6-foot guy, muscular bodybuilding type guy, and I would call him, and I am scared to death, and I'm saying, what the hell do I do, right? And he would talk me through it, and man, he always had a way of calming me down and just helping me relax and giving me some techniques, and I mean, he really helped in that regard so much.
Yeah, with regard to entities, I don't know of anybody else. You know, there was somebody on the group there, one of our groups, I think, I can't remember which one, today, and they were speaking about their, you know, what's going on with them at the moment, and I'm thinking, talk to Chrism, because really, I know nobody else who has the insight and the experience of entities, and is so not impressed by them, you know. Which,
he's not.
You know, no, and they know it, you know. So, so
it's almost
really
as if when Chrism's talking to you, they back away. I believe that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Santara. I believe when you're interacting with Chrism and you have that Chrism vibration going on in your mind, they stay the hell away from you at that point. I mean, he's like entity bug spray or entity spray, man. He just gets them off you. So, but it takes a certain humility, though. But for me, it wasn't just humility. It was more fear. It was more life preservation type of fear. I was legitimately scared a lot of the time when I called him.
Scared, yeah.
But that makes it a little more real. And I think you can sense that, you know, when somebody's really, really terrified. And I was.
Well, they can. I mean, entities are very scary. I mean, you know, especially when you're, you know, so judgmental about them not existing. And
I didn't
there
believe
they
in
are.
any of those things.
Yeah. So can you, you know,
It's because your worldview gets fragmented. If you think about it, I had an ontological perspective, this view of reality. My ontology at the time was one of rational, scientific thinking, PhD, college professor. This is the world. This is reality. But with the Kundalini, it's as if your reality is a glass pane, and it takes a huge, big boulder, and it sends it right through that window, and it shatters that reality. And when that reality gets shattered, it can be very, very traumatic, and it was for me.
Yeah, and it's like the very things that we really believe or don't believe in are they're the things that we have to be shown exist or don't exist, or that reality has to be changed. So when I hear somebody going, well, I, you know, don't, and they're I go, oh no. Oh no, they're the very areas that are going to explode. Because I know that from my own experience, and you're saying the exact same thing, you know. So, So I mean, and you know what Chrism was saying there to us earlier, and I was a bit distracted because I was off doing things, but he was talking about the fire and the destruction, and you know, I mean, in a Kundalini context, how we respond to the enforced change is what matters, you know, like, and then what arises out of those ashes of destruction. It depends too on how we respond, doesn't it? And on the choices we make to that destruction that's beyond our control.
Yes, and he means it. When he says surrender, he literally means that. And I resisted, even though I was terrified so many times. I mean, literally, like wetting my bed at night when I'm 40, terrified because of the things that are coming through the walls. And it's one of those things where I still resisted at that point. And I really just didn't want to listen to Chrism. I wanted to listen when I was the most scared, but when I was moderately scared, I still wanted to do it my way. And eventually, I believe that you will learn to surrender, and I eventually did, but it took a long time. And I believe if I had listened in the beginning, it could have been much faster for me and a much easier ride.
Yeah, I bet. But then again, you know, interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that we put ourselves? I mean, I ask myself that too. You know, on the one hand, I know if I didn't have Chrism, I would still be in more resistance than I am now. I wouldn't be as surrendered. I certainly wouldn't be where I am now, and that is 100% the case. But what's with that when we know about it, and then things get better, and we sort of make all kinds of excuses again? What's that about? Is that just what takes us so long, Michael?
I don't know. Looking back in retrospect now, I think, why was I so stubborn? I'm dealing with entities.
Yeah.
I'm unemployed. My life has been shattered, literally. Yet I still thought I knew the best way. Back then, I would have told you, yeah, Chrism can help some, but I know better. That's what I would have told you. And I know now I don't know better. And I should have known it back then.
Yeah.
But I just think it was part of the process. I think that was the process I had to go through to get to where I am now on the other side. And I'm glad I'm here now rather than where I was. So
yeah.
Maybe I needed
really,
that. I might have needed the extra beating.
Yeah. A wearing down of an established like ego or whatever, you know, that it takes a long time really for it. It's not an overnight thing, you know. There's layers of it there. I think it's
yes.
What would you say to people now about surrender? You know, words of wisdom there, Michael, please. You know, so people, let's say people are listening and they're in the middle of something.
Yeah.
You know, what does surrender actually mean?
For me, it meant getting out of my own way, because I would listen to what Chrism said, and when things would get really bad, I would start implementing those things. I was terrified a lot of the time at that point, and when it was horrible, I mean, it was unbearable, and I was so scared, then I'd start doing it. But I should have been doing those things all along. So for me, surrender is listening when it is not yet so uncomfortable that you have to listen, if that makes sense, because I wouldn't listen until it got so uncomfortable that I had to listen. So in my mind, when I think of surrender today, where I am with my level of surrendering, it's I listen and I try to do what I should be doing while it's still comfortable, because I know one thing: if I don't listen and I don't listen and I don't listen, it will get so uncomfortable that I will. So for me, surrendering is listening and doing what you're supposed to do the first time while it's still comfortable to do so.
That's excellent, Michael, and perfectly explained. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's excellent.
And that's why in the group, you know, people say things, and I respond in the group and I say, listen to Chrism, follow his corrections and instructions exactly as given, and here is the website, because there's a lot of information here. So that's what I always do when I respond to people, and I try to tell them that because that's what I needed to hear at the time. And even if they don't listen, maybe a seed will be planted and they can start doing those things sooner than I did.
Yeah. And that's really what the practice is all about, you know. When Chrism as well says, you know, do the practice and, you know, look at the safeties. And so, you know, you can be practicing. For me, I'm doing the safeties and I take them very seriously. So if I'm practicing the different things, such as tolerance, when really, you know, it's not so difficult, but then when it really becomes difficult, if that's something that I'm doing exactly as you're saying, when things are easy, well then it becomes part of how I manage when things are not easy and when things are amplified, and when the reason we have a practice and why we do it regardless, not just exactly as you say when things are tough. Because really, you know, for me anyway, when things are really tough, that's more crisis management. And I think we have to come into a place where, you know, we go through our amplifications. No, with ease isn't the word, but we can do that without huge crisis management. We learn to ride that wave and to get and to do it with our everyday living. Does that make sense? Our everyday surrender, really. Yeah.
Yes. It becomes part of your natural lifestyle habits. First thing I do now, when I wake up in the morning, is I get on my knees and I say a sincere prayer. I end with in the name of Jesus Christ, and I do that before I go to bed as well. And I just find when I start my day that way, and I start my day trying to be as tolerant and as forgiving as I can be, things tend to go better. And there's still some days where I deviate from the path, and I get the reward, and sometimes the reward isn't pleasant. I just realize now that I can be proactive, and I can create a heaven here for myself, or I can create a complete hell for myself. And I've done both very well.
I agree. And I think we do that by the choices we make. Like we've no control over
too.
the forest fire. Sure, we don't. Say that again, Michael.
Chrism talks about personal accountability, and that's big. I mean, Kundalini will teach you personal accountability. It will teach you that you are responsible for your thinking, your behaviors, and the way you treat people, including yourself. And it will remind you when you're getting off path. Have you experienced that as well, where it really just increases your accountability?
Totally. Absolutely. There's no escaping from that, you know. The forest fire or the whatever that is going on goes on. Regardless, it's our, I'm calling it choices, but accountability. That's what makes it a hell or a heaven. So you can be having a really tough time, but it does, like, perceived tough time from outside or from ego or whatever, but it's your own personal response or accountability to that, which is what makes the difference. And again, you know, as you move through the Kundalini, it's amazing how if you look at it from your old eyes, but they're not really your old eyes, but you know that you would not be doing that a few years ago, and that what you're going through now, even though it might be perceived as being difficult. Like I went through an entity thing recently, and Michael, I'm not sure if you were, I don't know if you're aware of it. It was quite tough. But I used to actually give thanks for it because it taught me so much. It wasn't the same as when I went through one in 2012. This was different. Mm-hmm. It was allowed by the Kundalini to teach me stuff about my ego that really I wasn't going to get the lessons any other way than this constant, non-stop barrage into my head and all around me every day. And so because of Chrism and the teachings and the practice and all of that and the Kundalini, it wasn't hell. It wasn't great, like, but it wasn't, you know, hell. I could see the positivity in it, and I was actually, and Chrism encouraged me to be grateful for the opportunity to learn in this manner. And so I did. And so I did give gratitude for this experience and this method of teaching. And so it wasn't hell on another level, you know. So,
I get that.
Personal responsibility.
Yes, it's huge. Everything Chrism teaches on the website, if you look at his teachings, there's a pervasive theme that's interwoven through most of the teachings, and that is your thinking impacts your reality. If you choose not to be forgiving, you're going to have a certain reality. If you choose to forgive and to be tolerant and loving, you'll have a different reality. But interwoven through all of his teachings, I see a pervasive theme of personal accountability for your own thinking and behavior.
One of the things that, it's amazing too to me in the context of Chrism and his teachings and all the different ways that he gives us those teachings and how we come into them at different phases of our activation or awakening or whatever. What amazes me is the layers. Like I remember when I came first working, let's say, on forgiveness, I had a lot of forgiveness work to do. I had a lot of that done before the awakening happened, but a real deep forgiveness work that I had to do. And then, let's say, 1 year later, 2 years later, whatever, the same teachings having a completely different impact and effect upon me. So I can see that in 5 years' time, 6 years' time, there's a newness, if that makes a newness. A newness. it's just never ending, Michael, and that there's new things happening all the time, and we adapt the very teachings from before to now, and it's amazing. I mean, it's just
It's so true. I mean, I read Plato's Republic in high school, and I interpreted it one way at that point. Then I read it again in undergrad and in graduate school, and I'm reading it again now, and it's a completely different book for me. So it's the same teaching, but I have changed, and my level of consciousness has changed, so I understand the words differently. So that's amazing to me, too. Yep. And at one point, I used to ask Chrism, I said, well, when is this going to be over? I'm activating right now, and is there a time frame, and when is this going to be done? And he would just laugh because I wasn't getting it at the time, but once you hit a certain point, there's another point, and this doesn't end. You're progressing for a very long time, if not forever, and that wasn't clear to me really at all in the first few years. I kept thinking there's a point where this is going to be completed, and I don't sense that anymore. Yeah. I'm very happy with where I am with my activation, and I feel like if it doesn't get any better than where I am right now with the activated Kundalini that I have right now, this is better than anything I've ever experienced, and I'm happy with that. And it seems to me that my level of happiness with where I am. Yes.
Oh, yes? This is interesting. I've interrupted you. I just went into the chat room.
No. I was just saying that my happiness is where I am, and I'm very happy with this level, and I'm feeling very joyous. And to me, that's an indicator that maybe change is coming because of my level of happiness with where this is. Every time I get really, really happy of where I am with the Kundalini activation processes, right on the horizon, there's another change coming for me to try to have another challenge. So the challenge is they give you a minute to catch your breath, but they never fully let your heart slow down to the point where you're going to be stagnant. I believe that the challenges will keep coming for a long time.
Thanks, Michael. I'm just after looking at the chat room, and Atlantic Seeker says, Santara, Chrism tried to talk to you, and when you didn't respond, he thought he was talking to the air, so he decided to end the show.
Oh.
So now the show isn't ended because it says it here, end episode. I've got the option. It tells me how much time is left.
Sure.
So the show isn't ended, but Chrism must not have had the studio up, and I should have spoken to him before I spoke to you. I should have said,
hey,
Chrism, I'm going over.
Well, I had a nice conversation with you, and I thank you for the conversation. It was really nice, and if there's anybody in the chat room that had any questions that you could help them with, that'd be good.
Yeah. I'm just feeling a little bit sad now because I know that Chrism drove all the ways over to Sebastopol, and by the time he got there, it was coming. I had ended the first show thinking, I cut off the first show after coming up to 30 minutes, and he was after driving on very bad traffic, as you can imagine, trying to get out of Santa Rosa. To get to this place, he had the girls with him, and so he must have just had his phone, and he was ringing in and didn't realize that we were actually still on air. And I'm thinking here as I'm speaking, is there any way that I can contact him? Who would have his phone number, or is it done now? Maybe he's left that area again. Probably done. I suppose we'll have to just end the show. Michael, you've got his number.
It was a nice conversation. Yeah, well, I don't have his cell phone number in this phone.
Oh, you don't? Okay. All right, it doesn't matter.
No, I mean, I'm outside on a different cell phone, but I'm looking forward to seeing you in Minnesota, and that's going to be a great conference with Chrism coming up at the end of this month, and hopefully then others will sign up, and they will have the experience to meet Chrism in person. It is a wonderful thing to do for yourself. It's one of the greatest gifts a person can give themselves is to spend the day with Chrism, and I've done it. I speak from experience. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so let's just say something about the seminar then. Let me see. I have the information here somewhere. I have. So Michael is going to Minnesota, and so am I, and so is Michelle, and there will be other people going there. And it's on at the end of October. Actually, it's only about 2 weeks away now, October the 28th and October the 29th. And it's in Mankato, which is about an hour from the Twin Cities, and it's Rosemary Goliath is organising it. And Rosemary has what's it called, an email, and I'm going to give you the email. It's rosemaryg@usinternet.com. And you can also go to Kundalini seminars and events with Chrism on the Facebook, and you will find a page there with all the information on it. So Chrism's seminars are quite amazing, really. I've been to a few of them, well, quite a lot of them. I've organised quite a few as well, some here in Ireland and one in New York. And Rosemary has organised quite a few in Minnesota. And there's been one in Germany, and there's been one in Florida, I believe. Here's Chrism.
Wait, Tara, don't go anywhere. I'm
Chrism.
proselytized.
Okay, you're live on air now.
Okay. These disasters. Go ahead.
No, myself and Michael have been talking, so we'll go quiet now. Or will we? Continue.
No, don't go quiet. I'm being saved as a sinner by somebody preaching in the parking lot.
Oh.
It's funny how these. That's the first time I've seen this in Santa Rosa. I've seen it in other cities, but with these disasters tend to bring out the most interesting aspects of an individual. And she's standing way at the end, kind of like talking to herself, but shouting really loud. And she's. Let me roll it down so you can hear better.
Syrians and ancient Egyptians. Repent while you have time.
Repent while I have time.
Oh. Well, she has hold the fire.
She's at the wrong end of the parking lot, so I don't know that she has that much confidence in herself.
She's got some backdrops there for that, though, hasn't she?
Well, you know what? I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at their spirituality because of this continuing disaster. I just took a picture of the Whole Foods market here, which is a popular market here in the United States, and certainly within California, Sonoma County, and rows upon rows of empty shelves. It's really interesting because it's really kind of the type of disaster that you would see in a Hollywood movie, that you would see in a disaster flick. It's very interesting to be here and to see all that is occurring, and yet to be somewhat not part of it. The house that I'm in did not get burned. It got right close to it, but it didn't get burned. And I think, so that gives me a level of ease that other people don't have. These folks that have lost their house, you look at it, you look at, like, say, 123 Sesame Street, and there's your house, and it's literally a pile of ash that some people have been allowed back onto their property, and you can see them just kind of sifting through it with their feet to see if anything is left. One woman found a mug, a coffee mug, and that was about it. And these were $1 million homes in some cases up there on the hill, and down here in the flat land. They're along $400,000 to $600,000 to $700,000 homes that people were still paying on. God. So, did anything I say in the earlier part of the broadcast go through it all?
It all went through, Chrism. Unfortunately, what happened, I made a mistake. Michael Del Sol came on, and I went over to see who it was, and that was the very point where you apparently came and asked me a question, and when you didn't hear, you clicked off, because I was told that in the chat room, because there's people in the chat room and that. So Michael and myself have been chatting. I was waiting for you to come back, and it was only a moment ago that I realized you thought the show had not gone out, that you were talking to the air. So we've been chatting about things.
It was just me and that lady back there. We were both talking to the air.
Yeah. So everything you said went out without a doubt, and you were heard.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, it's a real crucial lesson, I think, that Kundalini people can really take to heart, is this understanding that at any moment your life can come crashing down around your shoulders. And what have you done to prepare yourself? On the external, you can, like some people, they have a dolphin trailer or, any kind of an RV, they have something like that. But on the inside with Kundalini, your best preparations are literally the noble behaviors. The more you practice the noble behaviors, the less fear and egotistic rejection you're going to feel with regards to the Kundalini sweeping up your spine like a wildfire, bringing you the understanding that certain areas of your life now have to change, and having your ego say, well, I don't want to change that way. I like my life. It's comfortable. Life is good. I've got money. I've got a house. I've got a job. I've got a life. I don't want to change this. I'm not asking for Kundalini, and yet there it is. There it is anyway. And it's like, for the folks that have it happen to them that way, there's a great change involved. And there's, and they go through a level of resentment, just like the people that are in the evacuation stations now, like the different auditoriums of the schools and the different churches and places where people that are, they're being evacuated to. And, these are folks that have gone to church, they have tithed money to the church, and now, WTF, I paid my money, I went to church every Sunday, where's my payoff, God? The people that have the Kundalini come onto them out of the blue, unasked for, and all of a sudden having all these changes demanded of them, are, they have that same feeling. They have that same sense of being let down because the ego doesn't want to change, and the Kundalini's forcing that change to occur. You hear it so often with the Kundalini people. Well, I didn't ask for Kundalini. I wasn't looking for that. Why do I have to have it? With like 5 million other people trying to get it. This person's going, I don't want it. Thanks anyway. Give it to somebody else.
I know, that's so ironic. Yeah.
So yeah. Here people don't really even have that option. It's there. It's done. The house is gone. The house is gone. The garden is gone. The clothing is gone. In some cases, the pets have been killed. How do you get to work? How do you get food? What do you do to survive? All these things are coming up for these folks, and it's not an easy scenario by any stretch. Not an easy scenario. And my heart goes out to them, and yet at the same time, this is what you're being presented with. This is what you have to work with right now, and so you better start working with it. Especially if you have kids. The kids see you crying, and they know that life has been changed brutally, and they see you crying, and they lose all hope. And they start crying. And so you really have to start to hold yourself up, and let the children know that, change occurs. Well, same with Kundalini. Change occurs. And if your kids are concerned about, oh gosh, mom's doing these jerky little movements and she looks like she's, not having a good time, and she's making these animal sounds like Amelia does, and oh God, it's like, what's going on here? Well, you just have to calmly tell them. What do you tell them, Amelia, when they see that?
Well, Chrism, they haven't. So I'm so thankful. But they do know. I mean, yeah. So what do I talk to what do I tell them? I just tell them it's okay, with stuff that happens to me, and that it's fine, and that I'm surrendered to it, and it's fine, and it's okay.
Nothing that a couple of pints wouldn't take care of, right?
Yeah. I wish. I miss that sometimes, but there you go. That's part of it too.
And you look at that whole thing with the Irish people. I mean, they were treated so harshly by the British for so long that they were literally driven to alcoholism, and that curse has stayed with them to this day. That dealing with it type of like, oh my God, I need something to drink here. And something like this disaster, and with Kundalini, the Kundalini brings on the exact same type of response from people in many ways. They've had a day full of Kriya activity, which they don't even know is Kriya activity. They just know they've been put in pretzels all day long now and breathing in certain positions and, howling like a wolf or meowing like a cat or quacking like a duck in your case, Amelia. It's very hard. When it finally lets up, you might want that pint. She won't let you have it. So yeah, I can understand. Give me a good quack. What kind of quack did you have?
I didn't quack. I howled. I was the wolf. Quack, quack.
Of course. Now, who's Micah that you were talking with? Do I know Micah?
Not Micah. Michael Del Sol.
Michael Del Sol. Michael of the Sun. Yes.
Michael of the Sun. Yeah. So we had a wonderful conversation. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, hello, Michael. Good to hear that you're on the program, and thank you, Amelia, for covering, I guess, for the show for such a long time, because, I was talking with Brooke. I was texting with Brooke Robertson, and everybody who's listening should go to her page, Kundalini Priestess, and read some of the material that comes through her, accurate Kundalini information. And I was Skyping with her, not Skyping, but texting. And she said, "Oh, Santara just called me. You should get back on the show." And I thought, "Whoa!" I was being preached to in the parking lot, kind of enjoying it a little bit, seeing how she could come up with different phrases. And so that's why I called in. And so my thanks to you, Santara, and to Brooke Robertson as well. So thank you both.
And
so here we are.
There in the chat room.
Have you had any questions come up from the chat room or anybody call in?
Well, first of all, you've had a few inquiries about yourself, Chrism, and Jan would have phoned in during the first show that didn't go on air. Jan? Dr. Jan. And wanted to wish you well and hoped you were well. Dr. Jan.
Dr. Jan. Oh, okay. Hello, Jan. Sure. No.
Yeah.
We've been watering down the roof, and we've been watering, all the dry areas around the house. And unfortunately, today the wind has kicked up, and so the fires are kind of like roaring again. And there are mandatory evacuations in other cities apart, from the Santa Rosa city. Other cities are literally being wiped off the map, ladies and gentlemen. The fires are burning so hot and so heavy, entire towns are being destroyed, from the neighborhoods to the downtown to the industrial areas on the outside, gone. Just a pile of ash. And all these people, tens of thousands of people, are being evacuated to these evacuation stations. Like here in Santa Rosa, it's the Veterans Memorial, and they can fit, 400 families there, and then these other churches and schools. The schools have all been closed. Half the city has no electricity, has no natural gas, so there's no hot water unless you boil it. There are no stoplights or street lights. There's a stop sign on a placard at each intersection. They should take a good, the United States should take a good look at Europe and just put roundabouts in there. It's so much easier. Jeez Louise. God, they should get a clue. But anyway, they haven't done that.
Yeah, especially in situations like traffic lights out, it would really help. Chrism, are there signs of people being really good to each other? Is that happening there?
Yeah,
giving service
people,
and goodness?
Yeah, it's what I said. I did mention that earlier, I think. I don't know. It's been on my mind. There are heroes. There are heroes all over the place, and these disasters really bring out the greatest virtues in some of the people, and some of the people the worst virtues. Like, there are reports of looting now, and so now you can't. Now we're under a martial law here. We have a curfew, and you can't be out past 6 in the evening until like 6 in the morning, and you definitely can't go into the burned out areas because, first of all, they're not finished burning, and second of all, they don't want people to endanger themselves, which is to me a little off. But if you can prove that you were at such and such an address, you should be able to go over there and look at what's left. Maybe you'll find a mug, and all these areas. I mean, we here, Francine and I have sewage, and we have running water, and we have electricity. But in other parts of the city, most of the city, there is none of that at all. And the guys came over to make sure our gas was turned off today. This is an ongoing. These winds shifting. New areas of the city can receive a spark and literally burst into flame. It's been so dry this summer. It was so hot. It was at a couple of days during the summer. It was like 111, 112 degrees. And I don't know. I think that's in the 50s or 60s Celsius or centigrade where you guys are. Really, really hot. And so, of course, this dried everything out and was a perfect opportunity for something like these wildfires to latch onto and burn. I don't know did you see any of the videos I sent?
Oh, I did, and I've done some Googling as well, and I've seen other ones, Chrism, and I can't, it's horrendous. It's just, they're completely gone. I mean, buildings just gone, so you're driving past all these burned out cars, and interestingly, still some places magically it looks like green grass, and then right next to that a standing tree and normal, and then beyond devastation. It's like a war zone, really.
It really is. It's like a random war zone, though. I mean, it's like you said, one house will be completely untouched, green grass, trees, roses in the front yard, right? And the two houses on either side of that house will be completely gone, with the melted vehicles in the driveway. It's just very strange.
Yeah.
And that, there's something to be learned from all of this. And gosh, this is just a real difficult level of learning for people to accept. And in Sonoma County, Sonoma is a fairly wealthy county. Most of the people that got burned out, certainly at the beginning, had $1 million homes and, 2 or 3 cars, maybe a really nice car like a Jaguar or a Mercedes or something. And these people had good jobs and still, I would presume, have good jobs. And this is a real trauma for them because they were set up. They had it all. They had the great house, the perfect view, the perfect wife, the perfect kids, the perfect husband, making money, making money. And then, boom, in less than 24 hours, a huge chunk of the material aspects of that life is gone. And so these people are inside of an incredibly huge adjustment that is quicker and faster and not as long lasting as the people that go through a Kundalini wildfire adjustment. Kundalini lasts your entire life. This fire will be over in another 10 days, maybe even sooner. By the time I leave for Minnesota, that should be that for that. Whereas Kundalini goes on and on and on. And so in many ways, today's message is to embrace the change. Embrace the transformation, no matter how it comes to you. Michael Del Sol, he lives on the coast of Florida, the east coast of Florida, the worst place to live for a hurricane, right? Sorry, Mike. So every year he and his family, they look to the east, they listen to the radio, they look on the television. Is there a hurricane coming? And I think there is another hurricane coming right between Africa and South America. One is heading up through the South Atlantic towards Florida and the Caribbean and all that. And you got to ask yourself the question, is like, can I accept the change that this hurricane may bring upon me and my family? What must I do? What mindset must I have? And currently, I have to say that Michael Del Sol has a very, very excellent attitude. Since I worked with him a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, his Kundalini has really blossomed, and he could. Is he on? Can he come on? Can we bring him on?
Well, he's in the chat room. So, Michael, if you can come back on, that would be great. He's not here now, but as soon as he comes on.
Okay. Well, he had to go through a lot of change. Where the level of crucifixion of the old person was tremendous. And so have I, and so have you. Centaur, you know what this is about. How did you handle that?
I'm just texting him there now. Very badly sometimes. We were talking about that actually. Oh, I think that might be him. Will we go check? 1 second.
All right.
Hi, Michael. Is that you? Hi. Hello, number
Hello.
321 area. Hi, Michael. You're on air.
You're walking on the air.
Can you hear?
You got it.
321 here.
Did you press the red button there next to him?
Yeah, I have, of course. He's red. Michael, can you hear us?
Well, he had to go through, very strong levels of change too, and yet as he did it, and as he was able to find, levels of balance along the path, he didn't have to lose his job, although he lost some employment from it, like the first after that first came. He you can become very inappropriate at times, and you can do inappropriate things with your employers, like tell them to screw off or whatever, whatever you've been holding back. And we can do that.
Okay, here he is. I'll try again.
Good.
I'll try again. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Michael.
You're on air there with Chrism.
Hello. I am here.
So How did you alienate your first employer after the Kundalini came, Mike?
I like that part of the story. Well, I wrote a highly threatening and then very inappropriate email to the university president, not to my direct chair of my department, not to the dean who oversaw the various departments in the social science unit, but to the president of the university. And I told him exactly what I thought, and it was brutally honest, and a lot of it was true, but it was completely inappropriate for sure, and I don't advise that type of thing. But the Kundalini, in my mind, led me in that direction. It was the best thing that happened because I did not need to be employed at that time. I needed time to process.
Yeah, that can happen. I mean, it will demand that you expound and express upon the truth that she is giving you, and sometimes, you've got to say it, and you've got to write it, and you've got to express it in some way. I mean, sometimes we can have these bosses, and we can have these authority figures in our life that are doing the wrong thing and consistently doing a wrong thing, and we can build our tolerance to that, and that's a positive thing. We can build our tolerance, and yet after a certain while, the Kundalini steps in and says, "No more. Enough of that."
That's exactly how it happened, Chrism. That's exactly it. And like I said, too, I suspect the Kundalini knew that I needed that time. It was almost 2 years later before I went back to work, and I'm working now, and everything is fine now with my career. It's better than ever, actually. It's more than fine. And I think the Kundalini knew at that time that I needed that reclusive environment at my mom's house to process and to grow. And you knew me at that time. You knew I wasn't really assimilating well into society. So the Kundalini knew better than I did at that point, and she still does today.
Well, as you state, I was with you in Fort Myers, Florida, during just a couple of days of your time there, and sure, with the you had some very challenging behaviors. I think more so for you, it's to know how things are going to go for an individual and just have to sit there on your hands and really not say anything is, just kind of like was a test for me, because there's no way that at the time that we were there together that you could assimilate what it is that I had to say. You had to go through it in your very own way and in a very focused form of reinventing yourself in a way, reanalyzing who you were, how you were, why you were, what your agenda is here to do, and you had to begin to listen. And I think she really drove you towards a lot of yoga and a lot of strong exercises that were very helpful at stabilizing certain aspects of your psychology, right?
Absolutely. I did yoga again today. I practiced Bikram yoga today at 4:30 here in Florida. I'm still practicing yoga. At that time, though, I wasn't social at all. I talked to you by Skype, and I talked to my mom during the first year and a half, 2 years. I really had little contact with anyone else. But during that time, I was doing a lot of running. I would leave the house sometimes in Suntar, and I talked about this a little bit while we were having a discussion. She was asking me some questions while you were Skyping or texting earlier on the show. I was telling her that I would leave at 6 or 7 at night around dusk, and I would come back at dawn, and I would literally spend the night walking and running and being in the woods and climbing trees. I went through a big phase of climbing where I wanted to climb the houses and climb trees, climb buildings. And you explained it at the time and even later as I was pounding the Kundalini into each and every individual cell in my body, and that makes a lot of sense to me. But I remember running at that time, sometimes, 17, 12, however many miles it was, but definitely more than 10 every night. And I remember thinking that while I'm moving the energy in my body. That was what I was feeling and what I was thinking at the time, and I felt like I had to keep moving to keep the energy moving to help push it upward. And so that was the impetus, and I never questioned it at that time. But there was a lot I didn't do. I didn't go to the MDs, and I knew intuitively to do certain things. And intuitively, the Kundalini told me stay away from people, stay away from MDs, and run as much as possible. And those are the three big things during the beginning of the activation that I experienced.
It's really good, and climbing everything is really, also a symbol of the energy climbing the spine, climbing the spinal column, going from the earth chakra all the way up to the crown chakra, and I'm really, really amazingly proud of you, Michael, for going the way you have gone, and for being able to accept the gift of grace as it's coming, and you're also living within a very specific level of reward for that acceptance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, today my life is better than I could have ever imagined. I feel that most of the big challenges that I went through in the first few years of the activation seem to be behind me. I know that Chrism says it's not through with me and the Kundalini is not done. There will be more challenges. I understand that. But currently, I told Chrism this, and I'll say it again today. If it doesn't get any better than how it is right now, I'm very happy. I wake up every day and I get on my knees and I thank God for the opportunity to go and to serve the students where I teach and to be a part of the life that I have now. And I have a wonderful wife now, and I have 2 stepsons that are really my children now. I think of them as being my children. And it's a better life than I could have ever imagined prior to the activation. So I tell Chrism, if the activation is all that comes to me in this lifetime, I'm so happy to have it, and I'm so blessed to be where I am. And I experienced a lot of different things that happened today that I call synchronicity type events. When I was doing the underwater meditation last weekend, a snorkel just washed up out of the ocean, and those things are commonplace for me now, where I start to think about something or something that I need. It just seems to come to me just when I start to think about it in a really positive way. I teach online at a lot of different universities. I work as an adjunct professor at lots of different places, sometimes 8 or 10 at a time. And I start thinking, well, I'd like to work at that school. Invariably, someone from that university will reach out to me in some way, and then I'll meet someone who has the hiring authority, and I send them my curriculum vitae, and they say, hey, would you like to teach online for us? And I think to myself, that's Kundalini. That's the gift, is that if you really can surrender to the Kundalini and really start to help people and try to serve people the best of your ability, it gives you countless rewards that really come back to you 10 times whatever you give out to others. That's been my experience. And that's why I'd like to tell people who are going through the beginning of the activation phase not to give up, because this gets really, really fun. And I'm at a stage right now where it's a stage of complete enjoyment. I enjoy every day that I have the pleasure of being here and being able to do the things I'm doing right now. And that wasn't how I was before the activation. So I know that I've changed tremendously, and I'm just so thankful for the gift of the Kundalini and for everything I've experienced, and for you as our teacher, and for all the wonderful people that are in my life today.
And it took about 3 years, didn't it?
Well, it started in October of 2011. I was hospitalized for the blood pressure, and I remember telling the doctors, and my mom was there, and my wife at the time, that I had buzzing in the feet. And so I was saying that in October of 2011. So I suspect it's been about 6 years altogether since the beginning. But I was only able to go back to work in 2014. So I was out of work really between December of 2011, 12 until about August of 2014. So it took a good 2 years just for me to get through the initial processes. And during that time, I was living with my mom, and I was telling Santara how grateful I am. And my mom, really, a lot of people would have fake-racked me, and she just took care of me with complete love.
You're one of the folks that didn't ask for this, right?
Yeah, I had no interest in spirituality. I didn't believe in God. I think that's why I had so many entity teachers, because I would have said before my activation began that the people who believe in angels or demons, that they're simple-minded fools. I was a rational scientist. I'm a social scientist. I'm a PhD from Virginia Tech. I know reality, and my reality wasn't one that had spiritual things in there at all. So this was all a big shock to me. And now I look back and think how arrogant I was and how egotistical I was. And I just can't believe it now. I look back and think, how could I have been that way? But I certainly was.
Well, I think it's good. I think you're a good mixture of both the mundane reality that many people fix their life upon, and the reality of the Kundalini, which is far more expansive, and than a simply science understanding, and really giving yourself an opportunity to look at both sides of the coin at the same time.
And it's amazing too, though. The publications that I've published in the last few years have been so much better than anything I could have written or thought of before the grace of the Kundalini. And the Kundalini, it's interesting because it gives you that spiritual side you're talking about, but it also makes you much, much better at the mundane activities that you could have ever been. So I think that's probably true. Yeah, I experienced that.
Dr. Lee Sanella says, that it's the cradle of genius and all, the extremes of intelligence and creativity, the source of the savant, in a way.
Yes.
Well, Michael and Amelia, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to go. I have another meeting that I have to attend, and it's with the Minnesota Kundalini community. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump ship here, and I want to say thank you to you, Michael, for coming on the program twice, and for you, Amelia, for keeping the show going. Thank you very much. And
thank you. She's wonderful, by the way.
Going. Thank you. We'll see you when you're up there.
Yes, looking forward to it.
All right.
Okay.
Good night, all.
Bye, Chris.
Good night.
Goodbye. Say hi to the others. Hello. Okay, Michael. Well, any final words then before we finish the show? Chrism is gone.
Chrism gone?
Yeah, he is. So.
Well, I'll end the show if Chrism's gone in honor of Chrism with an Om. Is that okay?
That's perfectly okay. So before we do that,
all right.
I'm just going to give people, so hang on a second, Michael. I'm just going to give people the place they can go to if they would like to make a donation, and if they can make a donation to support the work that Chrism does. There are two places. The first one is the Kundalini Safeties website, and that's, www.kundalinisafeties.com. Go down to the end of the page where it says about Chrism, and you will see in writing to make a donation. Press that, and it's very easy. The other place you can make a donation is at www.chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com, and there's a donate button there. So again, if you can make a donation, I would really encourage to do so, because it goes a long, long way to supporting Chrism, to helping him pay his bills, and all the things that he needs just for everyday living. And it also supports your brothers and sisters in Kundalini, because he spends all his time helping and supporting us and people in crisis and people who need his assistance. So thank you very much, guys. And we're going to end the show tonight with Michael Del Sol, and catch you again at the same time next week. Go, Michael.
In honor of our teacher, Chrism.
Jetzt im King des Monats. Der saftig zarte Long Chicken mit großen King Pommes und Softdrink für nur $4,49 bei Burger King.